The sun above the alien city was red and heavy, making the air thick and hot. Michael stood in the crowd, his jacket dusty from travel, his eyes hidden under the shadow of his hood. He had only come to this part of the galaxy to trade, but instead, he found himself in the middle of a public execution. The arena was massive, carved from black stone, with banners hanging from the walls showing the symbols of the ruling clans. Alien voices shouted and cheered as drums pounded like a war call. The gates at the far end creaked open, and two guards dragged a young alien woman into the light. She was thin, her skin pale silver under the sun, and her hair was tangled like she had been kept in a cell for days. Her wrists were chained, her clothes torn, and yet her eyes burned with defiance. Michael could tell instantly this was no ordinary criminal. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, telling the crowd that she had betrayed her own people, that her punishment would be death by the beast. The crowd roared, stamping their feet against the stone floor. Michael didn't cheer. He simply watched, a strange tension building in his chest. From the opposite gate, the beast emerged. It was massive, its black scales glinting in the sunlight, its mouth lined with jagged teeth. The alien girl was pushed toward the center, stumbling but refusing to fall. Michael could see her eyes darting around, calculating, looking for an escape that wasn't there. The beast lowered its head, growling deep enough to make the ground tremble. The crowd screamed for blood, the drums beating faster. Michael didn't know why he stepped forward. He just did. In a single moment, he was moving through the crowd, his hand brushing the blaster at his side. The beast lunged, its jaws snapping inches from the girl. She tried to move, but the chains on her wrists slowed her down. Michael jumped from the stands, hitting the ground hard, rolling once before. Coming to his feet, the crowd gasped. The guards shouted in confusion. The beast turned toward him, its yellow eyes locking on to this new challenger. Michael didn't reach for his blaster. Instead, he drew the blade strapped to his leg. He knew alien law sometimes. The weapon you used mattered more than the fight itself. The beast roared and charged. Michael sidestepped at the last second, slashing across its side, the blade cutting deep. The creature howled, its tail whipping out to knock him over. He hit the ground but rolled back up before the beast could pin him. The alien girl stared at him, her lips parted in shock, as if she couldn't believe anyone, let alone a human, would risk this. The fight was fast and brutal. The beast lunged again. Michael leaped forward instead of back, driving his blade into its neck. The momentum of the beast carried it forward, crashing into the stone floor with a sickening thud. The arena went silent for a heartbeat, and then the roar of the crowd shook the air. Michael stood over the beast, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his face. The announcer shouted something in the alien tongue, but Michael caught only one word: claim. Two guards ran forward to take the alien girl away, but another voice, older and sharper, cut through the noise. It came from a robed elder sitting in a high seat, his eyes fixed on Michael. He raised a staff and declared something to the crowd. The crowd answered with a single, unified chant. Michael looked at the girl, who was staring at him with wide, almost desperate eyes. She stepped closer and whispered, her voice trembling but clear, human. "You saved me, now claim your right of first night." Michael froze, the words echoing in his mind. He had heard of strange customs and alien cultures, but he never expected to be part of one around them. The crowd chanted louder, their excitement growing. The girl's chains rattled as she took another step closer, her silver skin catching the sunlight. Her eyes pleaded with him. But there was something else there to fear. Michael's instincts told him this was more than a simple tradition. Whatever first night meant, it was a matter of life and death for her. And now, the entire arena was waiting for his answer. Michael didn't answer right away, his mind racing, the noise of the crowd pounding against his ears like waves. He had just fought a monster in front of thousands. And now this silver-skinned stranger was asking him to claim a right he barely understood. She stood close enough that he could see the tiny tremors in her hands, the chains still hanging from her wrists, her breath uneven before he could speak. 2 armored guards approached, their faces hidden under black visors. One of them held out a hand toward Michael. Not to help, but to pull him away from her. The elder in the high seat barked an order in a deep voice. The guards froze and then stepped back, their eyes flicking between the girl and the human. The elder's gaze was like steel as he pointed his staff toward a side gate. The crowd's chant grew louder, the air vibrating with their voices. Michael felt himself pushed forward. Not by force, but by expectation. The girl followed close behind, her chains clinking against the stone floor. The guards formed a circle around them, leading them out of the arena and into a dimly lit hallway that smelled of dust and incense. The drums had stopped, but the sound of the crowd still echoed through the walls. They entered a chamber with high ceilings and strange glowing stones embedded in the walls. The guards left, sealing the heavy door behind them. For a moment, it was silent, only the faint hum of the glowing stones filling the air. Michael turned to face the girl. "What exactly is this first night?" he asked, his voice low. Her eyes flickered toward the door as if she expected someone to be listening. "It's a law older than my people's cities," she whispered. "If someone saves my life in front of witnesses, they earn the right to be my first and only choice before marriage. No one can take me from them." Michael frowned. "Sounds like a marriage law," he said, but she shook her head. "It's more than that." She stepped closer, lowering her voice even more. "If you refuse, I will be returned to the arena tomorrow, but this time there will be no fight. Just a blade to my throat." Her words were calm, but her hands clenched so tight her knuckles turned pale. Michael felt the weight of what she was saying settle on his chest like a stone. He took a step back, running a hand through his hair. "Why would your own people kill you?" he asked. She hesitated, then looked away. "Because I refused to marry a warlord twice my age, because I spoke against him in front of the council. Because I embarrassed him, and now he wants me dead." She turned her gaze back to him, her eyes bright and fierce despite the fear in her voice. "But if you claim me, he cannot touch me without breaking the law. And he will not risk that in front of the clans." Michael studied her, trying to read her face. She was telling the truth, or at least enough of it to make sense. "And if I do claim you?" he asked. "Then we are bound," she said simply. "Bound until you release me. But no one will dare harm me while you live." There was no hesitation in her words, like she had been preparing to say them all her life before he could answer. The heavy door creaked open and a tall alien in ceremonial armor stepped inside. His armor was gold and black, polished until it reflected the light of the glowing stones. "The claiming must happen now," the armored figure said in a deep, accented voice. "The witnesses are waiting." Michael glanced at the girl, who gave him the smallest nod. It wasn't desperation, now was determination. They were led down another hallway, into a circular room, the walls covered in carved symbols. In the center was a low platform covered with dark red cloth. Michael could feel the eyes of hidden watchers even though the room seemed empty. The armored figure stepped aside. "Stand here," he commanded. Michael stepped onto the platform, the girl beside him. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with something he couldn't name. A voice rang out from somewhere above, speaking in the alien tongue. Michael couldn't understand the words, but he understood the weight in them. The girl reached for his hand, her fingers cold but steady. She leaned closer, whispering just for him, "Once you agree, there is no turning back. They will watch us, they will test you, They will try to break you, but if you stand your ground, I will be safe." Her words settled into his mind like a warning and a promise at the same time. Michael didn't know why he cared so much. He didn't even know her name until now. But something about the fire in her voice made him want to protect her. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Lyra," she replied. "Lyra of the Fallen House." He squeezed her hand just once before speaking, his voice clear enough to carry through the chamber. "I claim her." The moment the words left his mouth, the floor seemed to vibrate, a deep hum resonating through the stone. A hidden audience erupted in approval. The armored figure nodded once. But his eyes held something else, a shadow of doubt. Michael knew without being told that he had just stepped into something far bigger than a simple tradition, and there was no way out now. The chamber emptied quickly after Michael spoke. The armored figure gave a short bow before turning away, his footsteps echoing as he left. Lyra stood still beside Michael, her hand slipping from his as soon as the heavy door closed. For a moment, there was silence except for the faint hum of the glowing stones. "You don't look relieved," Michael said, watching her carefully. She didn't meet his eyes. "Because it's not over," she replied softly. "Claiming me gives you the right. But it also paints a target on your back." Her voice carried a sharp edge now, like she was forcing herself to stay calm. Michael took a slow breath. "You mean the warlord," he said. Lyra nodded, her silver hair catching the light. "Yes, but not only him. There are others who wanted me gone. Others who will not accept a human stepping into our laws." She moved toward the far wall, where a narrow slit of a window let in a thin ray of red sunlight. The air outside shimmered with heat. Before Michael could reply, the door opened again to alien attendants in long robes entered, their faces hidden by thin veils. They bowed slightly and gestured for Lyra to follow. "Where are you taking her?" Michael asked. One of them answered in the alien tongue, their tone formal but unreadable. Lyra glanced at him and said, "They will prepare the ceremonial room." He followed without asking permission. The attendants led them through a winding set of corridors lit only by dim wall lanterns. The air grew cooler the deeper they went, until they reached a wide archway draped in dark cloth. Beyond it was a large chamber, far richer than the one before. Glowing crystals hung from the ceiling, like frozen stars, casting soft light over walls painted with strange scenes of warriors and queens. In the center was a low, bed-like platform, covered with fabric so fine it shimmered with every movement. Bowls of scented water rested nearby, and a faint, sweet fragrance filled the air. Lyra walked in first, her chains gone now, her steps quiet. Michael followed, but his hand stayed close to his sidearm. Something about the room made him uneasy. 'Twas too quiet, too staged. "You're not here for a celebration," Lyra said suddenly, turning to face him. "You're here for a test." Michael raised an eyebrow. "A test?" She nodded. "The first night law is more than a union, it's proof. They will watch, not to see what you do, but to see if you can resist being broken by their pressure." Michael frowned. "And if I fail?" he asked. "Then they will strip your claim, and I will be returned to my enemies." Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed the truth, fear, and something else. Maybe hope. Before he could respond, a hidden door on the far side opened, and 3 figures stepped inside, tall and draped in dark red robes, their faces shadowed by ornate headpieces. They didn't speak, but the way they moved, silent, slow, deliberate, felt heavier than any words. One of them placed a small carved box on the table beside the bed and stepped back. Lyra's eyes flickered toward it, then back to Michael. "Whatever happens next, you must follow my lead," she whispered. Michael didn't like this, but he gave a small nod. The robed figures moved to stand along the wall. Their presence like cold stone. Lyra stepped closer to him, her voice so low only he could hear. They think humans are weak in spirit. They want to see if you can be tempted, shamed, or manipulated. And they will try all three before dawn. Michael's jaw tightened. Sounds like a long night, he said. She allowed the faintest smile. If we survive it, the law will be unbreakable. The box was opened, revealing thin strips of glowing cloth and a vial of liquid that shimmered in unnatural colors. Michael didn't recognize any of it. One of the robed figures gestured for Lyra to drink. She did without hesitation. Then they handed the vial to him. Michael hesitated only a second before taking a careful sip. It was sweet at first, then burned down his throat like fire. The air in the room seemed heavier now. Ka! His senses sharpening, every flicker of crystal light catching his attention. Lyra's silver skin almost glowed. The robed figures stepped back, watching in complete silence. Michael understood the game now. Every move, every word was being judged. One wrong step and this ritual would become his execution. Lyra moved closer, her voice steady, even as her hands trembled just slightly. "Remember, Michael," she whispered. "They want to see a predator, not prey." He met her eyes and gave the smallest of nods, already feeling the weight of unseen eyes pressing in from all sides. The first night had begun, and it was nothing like he expected. The silence in the chamber was so thick Michael could hear his own heartbeat. The robed watchers didn't blink, didn't shift, just stood there like statues carved from shadow. Lyra's eyes never left his, but her fingers brushed his hand for the briefest moment. It was not a gesture of affection, was a signal. Michael understood he was being measured with every breath he took. Every glance, every hesitation. The strange drink burned faintly in his chest, sharpening his senses, but also making his skin prickle, as if danger was just beneath the surface. One of the watchers stepped forward, placing a shallow bowl between them. Inside was a pale, living creature, small but pulsing with light. Michael had no idea what it was. The watcher spoke in the alien tongue. Lyra translated without looking away. "From him, they say you must eat it. It is a trial of dominance." Michael stared at the thing. It wasn't fear that stopped him. It was the knowledge that this was a game. If he refused, they would see weakness. If he obeyed too quickly, they would see a servant. Lyra's gaze held him steady, her voice softer now. "You must take it as if it was yours already." Michael reached down, picked up the wriggling thing between his fingers, and without breaking eye contact with the watchers, bit into it. The taste was sharp and metallic. Like biting into a live wire, he chewed slowly, then swallowed. The watchers gave no sign of approval, but one of them stepped back. The next trial came without warning. One of the watchers removed their robe, revealing a tall, alien woman clad in thin ceremonial cloth. Her movements were slow and deliberate as she stepped toward Michael. Her eyes locked on his. Lyra's jaw tightened, but she didn't move. Michael understood instantly this was the temptation Lyra had warned him about. The alien woman circled him like a predator, her voice a low hum. The watchers wanted to see if he would falter, if he would forget the one he had claimed. Michael let her circle, but his eyes never left Lyra. When the woman stopped in front of him, close enough for him to smell the strange perfume on her skin, he said in a steady voice, "I already have my claim." The woman's expression didn't change, but she stepped back into the shadows. The air in the room shifted. The watchers spoke quietly to one another, though Michael couldn't catch the words. Then came the final test, the one Lyra had not spoken of. One of the watchers drew a curved blade and placed it on the low platform between them. The steel gleamed under the crystal light. Lyra translated, her voice calm, but her eyes tense. "They say you must cut me, to show you own me." Michael's hand hovered over the blade. The room felt smaller now, every breath heavy. He could feel the Watcher's attention pressing against his skin. If he refused, they would call him unworthy. If he obeyed, he would break the very thing he was trying to protect. Lyra stood still. Her chin lifted slightly, her eyes steady on his. She wasn't asking him not to do it. She was asking him to choose the right way. Michael picked up the blade, its weight cold and perfect in his hand. He stepped forward slowly, the point of the blade just touching her skin at her shoulder. The Watchers leaned forward, expecting blood. Instead, Michael turned the blade, slicing. Only through the thin cord that held a piece of broken jewelry against her neck, the small pendant fell into his hand. He held it up. "I claim her." "But no one harms what is mine," he said, his voice steady. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the lead Watcher stepped forward, taking the blade from his hand and bowing slightly. The trial was over. The Watchers left the chamber one by one, their robes brushing the floor, the door shut, leaving Michael and Lyra alone. The tension in her shoulders eased, and for the first time since they met, she allowed herself a breath. "That didn't shake. You passed," she said quietly. "You didn't just claim me, you showed them. You can't be controlled." Michael handed her the pendant. "Then we both survived tonight," he replied, but deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The warlord wouldn't let this stand. And somewhere beyond the walls, plans were already being made. Asterisk. The first light of dawn crept through the narrow window, painting the stone floor in pale red. Michael had not slept. Neither had Lyra. They sat in silence, listening to the muffled sounds of the city waking beyond the palace walls. The air felt heavier than it had during the trials, as if the danger outside was closer now. When the door finally opened, it wasn't the robed Watchers or the ceremonial guards, it was a soldier in dark green armor. His helmet dented, his voice low and urgent. "They're coming for you," he said in the alien tongue. Lyra's head snapped toward him. "Who?" she demanded. The soldier's eyes darted to Michael, "The warlord's men. They have orders to take him alive and you in chains." Michael stood instantly, his hand finding the grip of his sidearm. "How much time?" he asked. The soldier glanced down the hall. "Minutes, maybe less. The elder can't stop them. The law is on your side, but their blades are faster." Lyra grabbed Michael's arm, her voice fierce. "We can't stay here. There's a hidden path under the lower quarters. My family used it when we fled the first time." Michael nodded, already moving toward the door. The soldier stepped aside, but his voice followed them. "Once you leave this chamber, you're in open rebellion. There's no going back." They ran through narrow corridors, their footsteps quick against the stone. Lyra led them down a spiral staircase into the cooler depths of the palace. Torches burned low on the walls, casting long shadows. Michael could hear distant shouts growing closer, the clatter of armored boots on stone at the base of the stairs. They reached a locked iron gate. Lyra knelt and pressed her fingers into a hidden groove in the floor. A small panel shifted and revealed a lever. She pulled it. The gate groaned open. Beyond it was a tunnel of rough rock, the air damp and smelling faintly of salt. They moved quickly, the light behind them fading until only the dim glow of the tunnel stones lit their way. Michael kept glancing back, half expecting to see dark shapes following. "This tunnel leads outside the city walls," Lyra said between breaths. "But it's not safe. There are smugglers, scavengers, worse." Michael gave a short, humorless laugh. "Better than the warlord's welcome party." The tunnel twisted and turned, the sound of running water echoing from somewhere ahead. As they reached a wide cavern, Michael stopped, holding up a hand. There were voices, low and sharp, coming from the shadows. A group of alien men stepped into the light, their clothes rough and patched, each one armed. "Well, what do we have here?" The tallest one said, his eyes scanning Michael before settling on Lyra, silver skin. "You're worth more than the human." His hand reached for her, but Michael stepped in front. His voice flat, "You'll walk away." The smuggler laughed. The others shifting their weapons into their hands. The fight was fast and brutal. Michael moved like a storm, his blade flashing in the dim light. The smugglers were quick but sloppy. One by one, they fell back, clutching wounds or dropping their weapons. The tallest one spat on the floor before retreating into the shadows. His voice bitter. "You've made enemies today, human." When the cavern was silent again, Lyra stepped forward, her eyes searching his. "You didn't have to fight for me like that," she said. Michael wiped his blade clean on his sleeve. "Yes, I did," he answered simply. They moved on without another word. Hours later, the tunnel opened into blinding daylight. The heat hit them instantly, and before them stretched a vast desert of red sand and jagged stone. In the distance, faint plumes of smoke marked the city they had left behind. Lyra shaded her eyes. "If we can reach the ridge before sunset, we'll find the old trading post. It's abandoned now, but it will give us cover." Michael nodded, starting forward. But in the back of his mind, he knew the warlord's reach was long. Leaving the city was only the first step. Keeping Lyra safe in the open wilds would be another battle entirely, somewhere far behind. Horns sounded a signal. A hunt had begun. And they were the prey. The sun was a merciless weight above them, pressing down with heat so fierce it felt like the air itself wanted to burn their lungs. The red sand stretched endlessly in every direction, each step sinking into the fine grains that clung to their boots. Michael kept his eyes scanning the horizon, looking for any movement that didn't belong. Lyra moved beside him, her silver skin shimmering under the light. The heat made her breathing shallow. But she didn't complain. In the distance, the ridge loomed like a wall of jagged teeth against the pale sky. Seemed closer than it was, the kind of mirage that could trick a traveler into collapsing before reaching it. Michael slowed suddenly, raising a hand. Lyra froze, her eyes searching his face. "What is it?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. His gaze locked on a faint glimmer in the air far behind them. It was the shimmer of armor under sunlight, moving fast. "They found us," he said, quietly. They picked up the pace, sand crunching underfoot, but Michael knew the hunters would catch them before they reached the ridge if they kept this speed. He glanced to the left and saw a cluster of jagged rock rising from the sand like the spine of some buried creature. "This way," he said, changing direction. Lyra followed without question. The rocks offered a narrow path that curved between high stone walls. The air here was cooler in the shade, but the echoes of pursuit were louder. The sound of hoverbikes cutting through the desert wind. Michael pressed his back to the stone and pulled Lyra close, his voice low. "When I move, you run ahead. Don't stop." The first hunter came around the bend, dark armor glinting, rifle raised. Michael stepped out and fired before the man could react. The blast echoed between the rocks. The hunter dropped, his hoverbike crashing into the sand with a hiss of cooling metal. Two more appeared immediately, firing in short bursts. Michael ducked behind the stone, the heat from the blasts searing the air above him. Lyra spotted a narrow crack in the rock wall, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "Here," she hissed. Michael glanced at it, then at the hunters closing in. "Go," he ordered. She hesitated for half a heartbeat before slipping inside, disappearing into the shadows. Michael took a deep breath, stepped out, and sent a precise volley toward the hunters. One went down, the other retreated to cover. Michael followed Lyra into the crack, the stone scraping his shoulders. The space opened up into a hidden cavern, cooler and damp, the air smelling faintly of minerals. Water trickled somewhere in the dark. Lyra stood, waiting, her eyes wide. "They'll come after us," she said. "Not if I sealed the entrance," Michael replied. He spotted loose stones near the opening, large enough to wedge into the gap. With Lyra's help, they worked quickly, pushing and stacking until the light from outside was reduced to a thin line. The sound of distant voices echoed faintly, but didn't draw closer, for now they had bought themselves time. The cavern was larger than they first thought. The floor uneven but walkable. Strange, glowing fungi clung to the walls. Casting pale blue light, Lyra moved ahead, her footsteps careful. "I used to play in caves like this as a child," she said softly. They were safe places when the city was not. Michael followed, his eyes sweeping over every shadow. "Safe. Might not be the word I'd use," he muttered. They reached a wide chamber where underground water pooled in the center. Reflecting the blue glow across the walls, Lyra knelt and cupped water in her hands, drinking deeply. Michael joined her. The water was cold and fresh, a relief after the desert heat. But the relief didn't last long. A faint vibration shivered through the ground. Michael's head snapped up. They found another way in, he said, already moving to the far side of the cavern. Lyra followed quickly. The tunnel there sloped upward, faint daylight showing at the end. They emerged onto the far side of the ridge just as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the desert in the distance. A cluster of ruined buildings stood half buried in the sand, the abandoned trading post. "We make it there. We can hold them off," Michael said. Lyra nodded, her eyes narrowing at the sound of engines behind them. The hunters were close again. And this time, Michael knew there would be no running, only a fight. Asterisk. The trading post was a skeleton of what it once had been. Wooden beams, half buried in the sand. Walls cracked and leaning. The wind howled through broken windows, carrying the faint rattle of loose shutters. Michael led Lyra inside, moving quickly. To check the corners, the smell of dry dust and old metal filled the air. They didn't have much time. The low roar of hoverbikes grew louder, bouncing off the stone ridge like a warning drum. Michael found a spot near the collapsed wall with a clear view of the open sand. "Stay low," he told Lyra. She crouched behind a stack of broken crates, her silver skin catching the dying light of the sun. The first hunter appeared over the ridge, then another, then a dozen more. Their armor black against the red horizon. At the center road, a taller figure draped in a dark cloak, the warlord. His helmet gleaming, his spear raised like a banner. Michael could feel Lyra's breath quicken behind him, but her voice was steady. "That's him," she whispered. The warlord stopped his bike, just out of rifle range, his voice carrying easily over the open sand. "Human," he called. "Give her to me, and I will let you walk away alive." Michael didn't answer, his hands steady as he checked the charge on his blaster. The warlord's tone sharpened. "Refuse, and you will both die here." Michael stepped into the open, the setting sun painting his figure in gold and shadow. "You'll have to come take her," he said. The warlord's laugh was low and cruel. He signaled, and the hunters surged forward. Blaster fire cracked through the air, sparks and dust exploding where shots struck the walls. Michael moved like he was part of the wind. Each shot he fired, dropping a hunter from their bike. The air filled with the hiss of burning engines and the shouts of men falling. Lyra stayed hidden, but her eyes never left him. The warlord himself advanced, his spear crackling with blue energy. He leaped from his bike, landing with the weight of a predator. The ground seemed to shiver under the impact. Michael's blaster was knocked from his hand in the first strike. The weapon skidding across the sand, they circled each other. The warlord's movements fast despite his size. The spear came in low. Michael dodged. The next strike came high. Michael caught the shaft with both hands, the energy searing into his palms. He twisted, wrenching the weapon free. The warlord slammed into him, sending them both crashing through one of the trading post's weakened walls. Sand and splinters filled the air. The warlord rose first. His helmet tilted as if mocking Michael. "You fight well for prey," he said. Michael's breath came hard, but his eyes were steady. "And you talk too much," he replied. Then, charged, they clashed in a storm of blows, fists, elbows, knees, each impact echoing through the empty ruin. The warlord was stronger, but Michael was faster. Each time the spear came close, Michael turned its power aside. Each time the warlord tried to grab him, he slipped free. Lyra watched from the shadow of the crates, her hands gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles went pale. When Michael was knocked to his knees, she didn't think she moved. Snatching up his blaster from the sand, the warlord turned toward her just as she fired. The shot struck his shoulder, spinning him sideways. Michael rose in the same moment, driving the spear point into the warlord's chest. The warlord staggered, a sound like a growl and a gasp mixing together, his eyes burning with disbelief before the strength left him. He fell to the sand, the spear clattering beside him. The hunters froze, their leader gone. Michael stood over the body, chest rising and falling. The silence after the fight felt heavy. He looked at the hunters, his voice carrying like steel. "She's mine by your own law," he said. "And I say she's free." One by one, the hunters lowered their weapons, the engines of their bikes rumbling as they turned away, leaving the ridge in a slow retreat. Lyra stepped out from behind the crates, her eyes shining not with fear now, but something deeper. She stopped in front of him, her voice soft but clear. "Then I claim you, human." Michael almost smiled. The desert wind whipping around them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, whatever came next, they would face it together. And the warlord's shadow would never touch her again.